Middle of the week, it's time to go on location. Today, we will go back to the basement. Because of popular demand, I received requests to bring back our location tour of Abba's time at the Glenstudios in 1974. So here it is, one of my favorite trips as a standalone episode. Here we are in Stocksund, an upper-class suburb in Stockholm. This area here was an important location for Sweden's film industry in the early 20th century, and it was also an important part in Abba's legacy. In 1974, Abba recorded the majority of their third self-titled album Abba at Glenstudio, which opened 2 years earlier. The studio was located in the basement of a private house, and there are some marvelous stories of their time at this special family place. Here we are at the house which used to be Glenstudio. This is where Abba came and went to record their songs in the mid-70s. I want you to know that this is a private place, so we are not lingering too much here and respect the privacy of the new owners. The house and studio used to belong to Bruno Glenmark and his wife Ann-Louise Hansson. In 1974, Michael Bitretov left Metronome Studio and became sound engineer of Glenstudio for the next 2 years. The advantage for Abba was that this studio could be booked for longer periods and they would come pretty much as they pleased. The studio in the basement was very small and was described as cramped with space for only 4 to 5 musicians. The studio was also right below the bedrooms. Sometimes Abba worked late into the nights and the sound was so loud that the kids of the family started to complain. At one point the house was shaking to the extent that bottles fell from the bathroom cabinet. Despite the small space, Glenstudio was a professional recording studio with good equipment, good sound, and especially Michael Bitretov knew how to make use of it. One day they discovered the swimming pool in the house, and this big hall was eventually used as an echo chamber to record Janne Schaffer's guitar. Bruno Glenmark's mother-in-law hadn't been warned about this procedure and apparently almost had a heart attack from the explosion of sound. You can hear this on Abba's So Long, and you can also notice these dazzling sounds on songs like Bang a Boomerang, Hey Hey Helen, and the outtake Ricky Rock'n'Roller. But despite almost having a heart attack from Abba's explosive sound, Bruno's mother-in-law continued to spoil Abba with delicious, freshly baked cinnamon rolls filled with butter and sugar. Every day when Abba came to the studio, the first thing they asked was, "Are there any rolls?" It was somewhat counterproductive for Björn, who wanted to lose weight at that time. To him, the cinnamon rolls were irresistible. Glenstudio and Abba's time at this place is described as having a homely atmosphere. This is also the place where one of the most curious projects was created at the end of 1975, on which all 4 Abba members were heavily featured. Michael Bitretov explored the studio after hours and started to work on songs that would become his 1976 album Let's Boogie. The shimmer of Abba is all over this album and put into a hilarious juxtaposition with Dretov's singing and parodies of different musical genres. We still need to talk about this album in depth and hopefully very soon. Here we are, not far away from the house where Glenstudio used to be. I wanted to bring you here to enjoy the view at the shore and to conclude the story of Glenstudio with some beautiful connections. Bruno Glenmark had a niece and nephew, and those were none other than Karin and Anders Glenmark. In the 1980s, they became part of Björn and Benny's musical Chess, and from then on they formed the Swedish duo Gemini and recorded 2 amazing albums written and produced by Björn and Benny. Anders Glenmark also worked on solo albums from Agneta and Frida, and in 1996 he produced and co-wrote Frida's final album to date. 20 years before, back to 1976, Anders Glenmark recorded the prominent lead guitar for Abba's Money Money Money. The final Abba session at Glenstudio was for the basic track of Dancing Queen. This is another turning point in their ambition to perfect their recordings. They continued to work on this song for several weeks. Remember, the vocals for Dancing Queen were eventually recorded and filmed back at Metronome Studio. Abba's 4th album, Arrival, became one of their most successful studio albums and brought them back to Metronome Studio. But already in 1974, around their time at Glenstudio, Björn, Benny and Michael Bitretov had early fantasies about building their own recording studio. That would still take a few more years until this landmark history would happen.